Chapter 1. Qin Shou. Dog, hold on a bit longer. The court has sent grain. I'll cook porridge for you right now. Woo woo woo, Dad. Open your eyes and look at your son. We have grain. We have food. Is this kid going to leave us too? Heaven have mercy. Just one more night, and dozens of people would have starved to death. The noisy voices around made Qin Shou's head throb painfully. He wanted to open his eyes, but his eyelids felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. A rough sensation brushed against his nose, and as his body swayed, Qin Shou slowly opened his eyes. God bless, the kid Shou isn't dead. Seeing Qin Shou's dazed expression after he opened his eyes, Aunt Ma joyfully wiped her tears. The dim sky, the cracked and barren ground, the ragged beggar-like crowd, everything felt strange, and Qin Shou's mind gradually cleared. Shou, your big brother who went to the military to fetch water. We have grain and water, we have hope. Seeing Qin Shou looking around, Aunt Ma helped him sit up, pointing at the long line under the big tree to the west with a beaming smile. Qin Shou looked over and noticed several strong men in black armor wielding large knives maintaining order beside the line. Retracting his gaze, Qin Shou quietly thanked the middle-aged woman beside him, who was wearing a patched gray coarse cloth shirt with cracked lips and a haggard appearance. Thank you. After sitting on the ground for a while and drinking the water brought by the tall, dark-skinned man, Ma Do, Qin Shou felt a bit more energized. Having lived another life, he didn't feel much joy. It wasn't that he thought the current situation was terrible, but rather that this body's condition was not much different from his original one, that even with good food and drink, he wouldn't live long. A long illness makes one an expert. Not to mention he had been surrounded by medicinal substances since birth. Having obtained dual doctoral degrees in Chinese and Western medicine by the age of 20, he could easily assess his body's condition with a brief examination. He had no memories of the original owner and didn't know how long he had been fleeing. Logically, with such a body condition, he shouldn't last much longer. It must be related to the strange energy circulating within me, Qin Shou speculated in his heart. However, he didn't feel much desire to investigate further. His organs were continuously deteriorating with age, and no medicine could cure him. Even if there were some methods to prolong his life, it would only mean dying a few days later. An hour later, the nearly 1,000-strong refugee group had eaten grain, drunk water, and caught their breath to continue on their journey. However, this time, the faces of the crowd were no longer desolate and numbed their eyes. Once hollow, were now filled with hope. The court would provide shelter, distribute land, and there would be relief grain in 3 months. 3 days later, they walked out of the drought-stricken Guangling Plain and entered the territory of Qianshan Prefecture. The nearby hills began to show greenery, and the overlapping mountain shadows in the distance were a deep green. After another 2 days, under the management of the county office in Qingshui County, Qin Shou and the more than 200 refugees in his group were settled in Waner Village. Nestled by the mountains and rivers, it was a good place, although somewhat remote, with the nearest town 20 miles away through the mountains. Entering the thatched hut assigned to him, Qin Shou lay straight on the dusty wooden bed. His mind went blank, and his eyes stared vacantly at the decaying roof. The faint smell of blood in the air couldn't draw his attention. After a while, a weak whisper emerged. Perhaps there is still a bit of hope. After 5 days, having eaten the bland and tasteless brown rice porridge for the first day without deliberately collecting information, Qin Shou unexpectedly overheard a few soldiers discussing martial artists the next day, realizing that this was not an ordinary ancient world and that extraordinary powers existed. The leading squad leader was a martial artist. Qin Shou witnessed him effortlessly lift a large stone over 1 meter in diameter, weighing at least 1,000 pounds. For an ordinary person, not only would it be difficult to lift or throw it far, even moving it would be a struggle. Martial artists indeed possess strength beyond physical limits. I wonder what the upper limits are. With extraordinary powers present, Qin Shou still did not hold an optimistic attitude about surviving. After deliberately gathering information over the past few days, he learned that his physical condition would not improve through martial arts, the likelihood of dying from training was even greater. This was because martial artists began their training by honing their bodies, and he had only made it to Waner Village thanks to the Ma family. For someone who struggled to walk, how could they talk about intense physical training? Moreover, practicing martial arts requires techniques and corresponding secret medicines, and obtaining these was a significant challenge for ordinary people. Qin Shou wasn't too worried about this aspect, although he had just escaped the identity of a refugee. Earning silver was not too difficult for him. Basic martial arts techniques can be learned from martial arts schools for 30 to 50 taels of silver. I'll first see how martial arts really work and then plan further. After resting for a night, Qin Shou began cleaning the thatched hut early in the morning. He swept away the dust and cleaned the bloodstains left on the floor and at the door. It was human blood. Qin Shou had heard the officials mention that the original villagers of Wanner village had perished, and like the refugees, they had also suffered from the blood disaster caused by the Blood Lotus sect. This disaster covered the entire Guangling prefecture, affecting several surrounding prefectures. It was a natural disaster, but more so, it was man-made. The Blood Lotus sect's followers destroyed the Lingjiang levee, and the torrential floods inundated the downstream Guangling plain, leaving 10 out of 10 households empty. Moreover, misfortunes never come alone. They encountered an once-in-a-century drought, and the fleeing refugees gradually ran out of tree bark and grass roots to gnaw on, leading to widespread starvation. Wanner village was one of the villages that was massacred by the Blood Lotus sect during the chaos. More information was beyond the reach of the lower-class people, and no one cared after all. What good would it do to understand? Life would go on as it always had. Inside the thatched hut, besides the bed, there was a table with a broken leg, some old pots and pans, and a few farming tools. Qin Shou stepped outside to take a look. The thatched hut was located at the foot of the mountain behind the village. It was somewhat remote, but not far away was a small stream, making it convenient to fetch water. With thin arms and legs, lacking strength, he toiled all morning and finally managed to clean the house. Shou, the relief grain team has arrived. Just as he sat down to catch his breath, Ma Dao's voice came from afar. When Qin Shou moved to the door, he happened to run into him. Looking at the pale and weak boy, Ma Dao couldn't help but mutter again, "You shouldn't have chosen this house yesterday. There were more people in front, and we could have looked out for each other. It's quite good the environment is serene and suitable for recuperation." Qin Shou didn't argue, just smiled gently and said, whether due to long-standing habits or his sensitive identity, living alone was always better. Along with the grain distribution, a new household registration was conducted. The registration officer would ask about the original place of residence, just going through the motions. Qin Shou had no memories of the original owner based on the information he had gathered over the past few days. He simply said he was from a village not far from the Ma family. After receiving the household registration documents and a 2-acre land deed, with Ma Dao's help, Qin Shou carried a large bag of rough rice back to the thatched hut, settling down in this unfamiliar time and country. Chapter 2. Rapid Growth in Comprehension. After drinking bland brown rice porridge for 3 days, Qin Shou's physical condition improved somewhat. After a careful diagnosis, he estimated he could live for about 6 more months. To enter a martial arts school, one needed silver, and farming was certainly not feasible. Making soap, paper, glass, and dyeing cloth were not difficult for Qin Shou. He even knew the detailed processes for creating powerful gunpowder, high-hardness steel, and other complex items. After all, he was quite intelligent otherwise. He wouldn't have been able to obtain dual doctoral degrees in Chinese and Western medicine by the age of 20, despite spending more than half of that time in a hospital in other aspects. Qin Shou felt indifferent, but his memory was notably superior to others. Once he had read something, he would basically not forget it, making him quite good at remembering things. Coming from a well-off family, he had a lot of time lying on a hospital bed, combined with his extraordinary memory, even though he had only lived for 20 years in his past life. The knowledge he possessed was far beyond that of an ordinary person, and the vast amount of information stored in his mind was even more extensive. I wonder if it's just my illusion, but my previous memory seemed to be clearer, and my thinking ability seems to have improved. Qin Shou frowned slightly at this moment. The feeling of thinking about the production processes and techniques of certain items became increasingly evident. What was originally just recorded in his mind, with a little research, not only was the related knowledge completely digested, but even within a few seconds, countless ideas emerged, and the production techniques of the items have been improved several times. The ability to think has indeed improved, and by a large margin, Qin Shou murmured. In his previous life, although he was considered a genius by others, he was still within the realm of normal people. Now, however, there was a qualitative difference between him and his former self. It seems that the hope of surviving has increased significantly. A genuine smile appeared on Qin Shou's pale face, the first since coming to this world. He had many ideas about making money, but after some contemplation, Qin Shou decided to return to his old profession medicine, that, in no other reason. just safety. Due to the limitations of his special experiences in his previous life, he had not treated many patients aside from the hospital bed. He spent most of his time in the laboratory. However, most of the patients he had treated had basically recovered, which gave him a reputation at such a young age. The hour of the dragon. Qin Shou sat in the cart, pushed by Ma Da-hu, heading to Qinlin town with several villagers from Wana village. On the cart, besides Qin Shou himself, there was also half a bag of brown rice, which belonged to him. Feeling a bit embarrassed, but there was no other choice, he certainly had to repay the kindness of the Ma family in the future. After a few days of interaction, Qin Shou learned about their connection. The original owner had given Ma Da Nyang a sip of water when she was about to die of thirst. Later, during a half-month escape, the Ma family took care of him in every possible way, even letting him eat the last bit of grass roots before the imperial soldiers arrived. The original owner did not die of starvation, but of illness. Such a body could not withstand the intense trekking, and after falling asleep, he woke up as the current Qin Shou. It took an hour and a half to traverse the rugged mountain road of 20 miles. Upon arriving in town, with the help of Ma Da-hu, he sold the 50 pounds of brown rice for 250 coins, agreeing to meet at the town entrance in 2 hours before. Parting ways, Qinlin town, backed by vast mountains, is known for its high-quality timber and herbs, and is a moderately sized town. Qin Shou first visited a bookstore, renting an hour of reading time for 10 coins, and quickly started flipping through the books. There was no reading barrier with traditional characters. After looking through several history books and geographical records, Qin Shou began searching for books related to medicine. However, he only found a pharmacopoeia for identifying herbs, which recorded not many types of medicinal materials. Most of the illustrations matched the names in Qin Shou's mind, but some names had changed, and there were even a few herbs that he found completely unfamiliar in both form and name. Iron skin grass can be used to make body-tempering liquid for warriors. Expensive. Market price between 10 to 20 taels. Qi bloodgrass can enhance a warrior's qi and blood, priced above 30 taels. The introductions to these two herbs were brief, but Qin Shou was most concerned about them, not only because they were related to warriors, but also because they represented one of the most probable paths to cure his own ailments in this world of special plants. Qin Shou read quickly, flipping through dozens of books in less than an hour, mainly including history, geography, local chronicles, and some cultural books, giving him a preliminary understanding of this world. Looking at the hourglass in the bookstore, realizing there was still some time left, Qin Shou approached the counter and asked the shopkeeper, "Shopkeeper, where are the books related to medicine?" "Isn't it that Shun's pharmacopoeia you already looked at?" replied a middle-aged man in a blue shirt and a square cap, with a pale face and no beard, putting down the blue-covered book in his hand. "Isn't there anything else?" The shopkeeper looked at him strangely and said, "Young man, are you joking?" The Shun's pharmacopoeia was compiled by the great Dr. Shun Renda for herbalists. After asking a few more questions about the medical clinics in the town, Qin Shou left the bookstore. The flow of knowledge was even slower than he had thought. Even basic medical knowledge had not been widely disseminated. After leaving the bookstore and inquiring further, Qin Shou evaluated the 3 medical clinics in town in his mind: Shun's Medical Clinic, Materia Medica Hall, and Huichun Hall. Each of the 3 clinics had its unique characteristics. Shun's had a renowned doctor with the most fame and the most physicians. The Shun's pharmacopoeia was compiled by them. Materia Medica Hall had the most power besides consultations. They controlled 80% of the herbal business in Qinlin town and could cultivate warriors themselves, making them the most profound and historically established among the 3 clinics. Huichun Hall was much smaller in scale, but it managed to stand out between the 2 larger clinics because its owner could refine Huichun pills. Excluding Huichun Hall, Qin Shou first went to the nearby Shun's Medical Clinic. The establishment was quite large with many patients, and there were 6 doctors just sitting in the hall. After explaining his purpose to a pharmacist, Qin Shou was led to a reception room in the back. After a quarter of an hour, a pale-faced young man with a thin build lifted the curtain and entered, his gaze falling on the boy sitting in the chair looking out the window. He was slender, with a pale and transparent complexion, his tied-back hair looking dull and lacking nutrition, wearing a patched black short outfit that made him appear to be only 14 or 15 years old. Turning his head, he revealed a handsome face, but the sickly and weak aura diminished his good looks, with only his pair of pitch-black eyes being quite distinctive. After scanning him from head to toe, The young man clasped his hands together and spoke in a bland tone. This young brother, I am Shun Liang, the junior physician of Shun's medical clinic, and I will be responsible for assessing your medical knowledge. I am Qin Shou, as in longevity. Qin Shou stood up and returned the greeting. Upon hearing this name, Shun Liang's expression became slightly strange. What aspects does young brother Qin excel in? Herbal decoctions and acupuncture. I have some accumulation. Qin Shou replied, honestly, did I ask that so? May I ask which divine physician you learn under, Dr. Qin? Upon hearing this, Shun Liang no longer maintained his politeness. Hearing the sarcastic tone in his voice, Qin Shou frowned slightly, his earlier amiability fading, and his tone became flat. I cannot disclose that. Then let's begin. Shun Liang's disdain intensified in his eyes, and he snorted lightly from his nose, starting to ask basic herb knowledge. He asked about over 100 types of herbs, asking Qin Shou to answer their effects, uses, characteristics, and so on. Qin Shou answered about 90% correctly, even discussing their growth habits and extending their uses, but to Shun Liang, this came off as mere showmanship. Some very basic herbs uses could not be answered. While he spoke about some uncommon materials with vague information that I in his heart, he defined Qin Shou as someone with a bit of talent, but lacking awareness of his own limits, arrogant about his knowledge, and a clown seeking attention. Unfortunately, Dr. Qin, you have not passed the preliminary assessment of our Shun's medical clinic, Shun Liang said with a forced smile. Farewell. Qin Shou nodded, saying nothing more, and walked out. Watching the boys back, Shun Liang snorted and said to the pharmacist who had brought Qin Shou in, you have a good eye. Fortunately, the master did not come, or how much time would have been wasted. Truly, anyone can just barge into my Shun's medical clinic. It is your discerning eye. Second young master, the pharmacist flattered with a smile.